We cringe just a little bit when we mention the words college football and bracket in the same sentence, because bracket is typically a word reserved for March Madness and that whole field of whatever it is, like 100 and whatever team is going to be in the future. However, this is where we are now in the world of college football. We're going to give you our college football playoff bracket prediction for who's going to win the whole darn thing here. In a matter of just over a month, we'll crown a national champion. We'll tell you who it's going to be on this show. Welcome into the Hard Count. It is Thursday, December 12th, 2024, last one on the face of the planet. Caden Smith, producer for the Hard Count, brought up a really good point before the show. A lot of love for 11-11 Make-A-Wish. How about 12-12 Make-A-Wish? Let's make some wishes come true today. We got Bill Belicheck going to North Carolina. Chapel Bill about to be on and popping in the world of college football. We'll give you our thoughts there. Spoiler alert, I do not get that at all. Speaking of on and popping, the transfer portal continues to churn. We've talked about a lot of names that have jumped in there. How about some names that are starting to maybe give us some direction, some names that maybe even have announced where they're going to school here in the not-too-distant future? If you were dialed in last night to Pete Nakos on the social platforms, to the On3 main account on the social platforms, the On3 transfer portal account on the social platforms, the portal was not resting, firing off some rounds. Connor Wegman announced where he's going. Florida State, they got a quarterback. So we'll give you our thoughts there, give you the latest there. And at the end of this thing now, we're going to give out some postseason hardware. The Progrum Awards, the third annual Progrum Awards. We got a couple of new additions to that awards ceremony we're going to give out. As always, we'll give out the Hard Count Heisman. And we also are going to give out some of our other more... Standard is the wrong word because there's nothing standard about this award show, but we've got some typical hardware that you would see at other award shows that are maybe under a little bit of a better, more improved label. Glad to have y'all here. Let's waste no more time. If you're new to the show, what are you doing? Welcome. Glad to have you here. It's college football, nothing but college football. Make sure you are subscribed now, okay? We're heading into a massive part of the year where the transfer portal shows no mercy. The college football playoff is about to be cinema. Want y'all all the way dialed in. Thank you in advance for doing that. Before we get to our college football playoff predictions, let's start with what broke yesterday with the team that is hoping to be in the college football playoff this time next year. Bill Belichick. Yep, that Bill Belichick. The mumbling, cutoff hoodie, Tom Brady sidekick / maybe responsible for Tom Brady's success, however you want to cut that, is heading to be the next head coach in Chapel Hill. It is now going to be Chapel Bill. And here's what I want to start with. This is a really fun storyline. Like, as a college football fan, having arguably the greatest football coach at the professional level of all time is fun for college football. If I'm a North Carolina fan, I can easily talk myself into this. You don't think a cutoff hoodie looks sick in Argyle and that Tar Heel blue? I promise you it does. I promise you it does. So there's a lot to like about this. However, if we're just going to go first-person shooter mode and how we feel about this thing, I don't get it at all. I don't get it at all. For starters, Tom Brady is, I think, arguably the most mentally tough competitor, most mentally gifted competitor of all time. Like, it took a lot to bother that dude. He had a million fourth-quarter comebacks. Like, he had ice in his veins, and he was extremely, extremely mentally tough. He has been on record, along with a number of other NFL superstars that have said this guy was kind of hard to play for, and I'm putting it lightly. So if Tom Brady and all his success and the way that he's wired found Bill Belichick a little bit tricky to play for, so much so, in fact, he ended up going somewhere else to finish his career, win a Super Bowl without Bill Belichick, mind you, in Tampa. How do you think that's going to go for Jimmy Four-Star, who's still trying to figure out life in general, let alone college football? Do you think he's going to respond extremely well to the Patriot way? You're saying, well, JD, hey, listen, like, it's not going to be the old Bill Belichick. Really? Are we sure? Because if Bill Belichick was going to adapt, he'd still be in the NFL, just to call a spade here. It was Bill Belichick's lack of willingness to adapt that kept him from being a coach right now for the New England Patriots, from my understanding. So I don't get it from that front. I think that's going to be a very, very quirky fit, kind of round peg and square hole. Also, there's, I think, a fair question to be asked here, like, if I'm Bill Belichick, why am I doing this? Like, you can go make great money on TV. You can have a blast being on the McAfee show and chopping it up with NFL football and different shows all the time. Like, why do you want to do this? The response there is like, hey, JD, he just wants to be around the game, man. He loves football. Does he? Or does he just want to get back to the NFL? Because if the stepping stone is I'll do a great job at North Carolina and then I'll get back to the NFL that way, I'm like, I don't know if this is necessarily the path to do that. Because I think the thing that a lot of folks are standing on when it comes to their take around Bill Belichick being a success in Chapel Hill is, well, hey, JD, he's going to run it like an NFL program. All right, they're gonna flip this thing on its head. They got some NIL money they're going to throw around there, and they're going to make that place a contender. That's great. You run it like an NFL program. Do you have NFL players? Are you out recruiting Miami, Clemson, Florida State, SMU, Louisville? Like, are you going to have better players than those schools? Because from what I can gather, it's going to take a lot for North Carolina to close that gap, even if they have a commitment to NIL on that front, which it sounds like they're going to. I don't see it. JD, he's got 8 Super Bowl rings as an assistant and as a head coach. That's awesome. We don't play for the Super Bowl in this sport. Super Bowl rings don't get you anything here. That doesn't have any impact on the collegiate game. In fact, those two things I think are extremely, I guess there's some similarities that we've gotten here between the NFL and college football over the course of the last few years. I think they're still very different when it comes to the type of player you deal with, when it comes to the type of roster you build, when it comes to how you acquire talent. Like, this is not going to be a copy and paste, oh, he had success in the NFL, so he can go to a place like North Carolina, who is not a juggernaut by any stretch of the imagination, and they can just turn that place upside down in a hurry. I don't see it. I really don't see it. Now, this is a dangerous water to wade into, so we're going to try and do it carefully. Bill Belichick without Tom Brady, record of 83 and 101. No, just let that sink in. 83 and 101. So I'm not saying he's not a good head coach, but if you take away Tom Brady, I think there's quite a bit of shine that is lost from the Bill Belichick reputation and the lure and all that. So I get it. I hope, as a college football fan, I hope this works. Like, Bill Belichick cutting promos every other Saturday and having, like, Duke, North Carolina be a fun matchup for everyone in the college football public. Like, I'm all here for that. I'm here for Manny Diaz versus Bill Belichick, but I don't see the fit. This makes no sense to me. I don't get it. I hope it works, but I do not see a world where this is something that we look down the line here and say, man, Bill Belichick's run at North Carolina was really cinematic, wasn't it? That was special. The Tar Heels made multiple college football playoff appearances, multiple ACC titles. I don't see it. I don't see it personally. But let me know in the comment section how you feel about that one, man. Let me know if I'm just wildly off base. But that was my initial reaction as that news broke yesterday. And we kind of prefaced it a little bit on the show yesterday, so I'm glad we got our 2 cents out there before it actually broke. But yeah, just it'll be fun press conferences. It'll be fun stories, but like I don't know how that works. Now, we have walked through an incredible regular season. We have walked through an incredible conference title weekend. The field is set, the stage is set, and we're going to give you our game-by-game predictions here as this thing progresses in the college football playoff. But like, y'all, I think it's best for us right now on this wonderful December 12th, 2024, to give you our bracket prediction for who's going to win the national championship. Now, as this thing goes now, obviously, if we predict the game wrong, we're going to revisit that and give you a different prediction as the bracket progresses, okay? So, like, new information, new opinion is kind of our stance on this show. Before we give you our take on the bracket as it stands right now, let's take a look at our preseason bracket. Because, y'all, going into November, I was like, hey, we got it dialed. We got this thing dialed. We might have 75% of this bracket. Go ahead and take a look at this. That, of course, was not the case. Starting with the G5 rep, y'all, we had high hopes for App State. We did. I thought there was a chance App State would kind of put some pieces together, make a run. Was there some Caden Smith bias baked into that? I'd like to tell you no. In hindsight, maybe it looks better to say yes. I don't know. I will say this. We got the Ohio State-Tennessee matchup right. Different seeding. However, we got that right. Miami, I fully thought going into November they were going to be the ACC rep. Utah, charged to the game a little bit because Cam Rising got hurt. It is what it is. Alabama, sorry, I did not have the Oklahoma loss on my bingo card for them. And then Florida State, I mean, we could not have been more off base when it comes to our assumption on them. So, all that's to say, still had Oregon and Georgia 1 and 2, so we'll pat ourselves on the back there. We had Texas, we had Notre Dame, we had Ohio State, we had Tennessee, ball up top. So, looking at this current playoff bracket, let's just go round by round here and work our way in and fill this thing out. But let's start with the most intriguing matchup of the whole freaking tournament for me, and that's Ohio State-Tennessee. This one is so fascinating because when you look at what Tennessee is, man, like I watched the Michigan game. If I'm preparing for Ohio State, I'm like, y'all, we can do that. And people dunk on Nico Iamaleava and the lack of success he's had at different points this year. He's still been very serviceable, in my opinion. No shade to Davis Warren, but Nico Iamaleava can go for more than 60 yards and 2 interceptions against Ohio State. Like, he can give you a better stat line than that. So I have that thought. But then I pair it with the idea of, if I'm Ohio State, must win is such an overused phrase in the world of sports. They absolutely have to win this game. Like, if they don't win this game in Columbus, I wouldn't fire Ryan Day. I don't make decisions. I think Ryan Day would ultimately be fired. I think this team has a bitter taste in their mouth from that Michigan game. So we're going to take Ohio State to beat Tennessee in round one. I also like the matchup on the perimeter for Ohio State. I think that the way that Josh Heupel draws up the wide splits, that can be really tricky. I think Ohio State's secondary has enough personnel to be able to play man coverage and be able to have good focus on the box and try and neutralize the run game for Tennessee. So we'll take Ohio State purely because they're the most desperate team. Extremely talented, no doubt about it, but I think the Ohio State desperation allows them to get that win in round one. So Ohio State will advance to play Oregon. Put a pin in that. We'll get there in a second. You also have the 5 seed in Texas getting ready to get after it in Clemson, or against Clemson, rather. This game will be played in Austin, Texas. But this is a fun one because you got a lot of storyline juice here. I mentioned it, man. Cade Klubnik, Quinn Ewers, they played each other in high school in the state title game, actually, in the state of Texas. Cade Klubnik got that win. So, I mean, I understand it was high school. It was a long time ago. I promise you, Quinn Ewers probably remembers that game with a certain amount of vitriol, if you will. The thing for me in this game is Clemson's path to winning requires a lot of explosive plays. Texas has the best secondary, statistically speaking, in all of college football. Like, they're either number one or top 10 in just about every single category when it comes to how you grade out a secondary. And so if that's the case now, I don't trust Clemson to be able to play a ground and pound style of ball, to be able to beat Texas how Georgia beat Texas. If there's a path here, it's Cade Klubnik kind of breaking the game plan with his legs. I think that Quinn Ewers and this Texas team is poised to make a run. I love their big game chops. I think Texas gets a win in round one over Clemson. They advance now to play the Fighting Cam Scadaboos and Arizona State in the next round. So we got Ohio State and Oregon, Arizona State, Texas, queued up for the next round. We'll get to that in a second. On the other side of the bracket, and y'all, just to be real, if I could pick which side of the bracket I wanted to be on, it would not be the side that we just mentioned. It would be the side with Georgia and Boise State and Penn State and SMU and Indiana and Notre Dame. Like, that's the side where I'm like, okay, there's some advantageous paths here, if you will. But let's start with Notre Dame, Indiana. This is going to be a fun one, man. The fact that you got two teams in the same state playing in a historic venue in South Bend, like, I'm excited for the casual sports fan that says, hey, the college football playoff's on. Oh, Notre Dame, Indiana's on. I'll go watch that. And to see, like, Touchdown Jesus, hopefully it's covered in snow. Hopefully that crowd is electric. I imagine it will be. The thing with this game for me, man, like, you could make the case against Notre Dame and say, well, who have they played in a minute? Like, we really value on this show the path of resistance, preparing you for big games like this. And Notre Dame, to be fair, like, their toughest game has been what? USC as of late? Since that first game against A&M in week one. I mean, I guess Army and Navy were ranked, so on paper those look good. Like, they haven't had to step under the heavy bar all that recently, which is absolutely a fair case to make against them. Speaking of the heavy bar, Indiana, they stepped under the heavy bar. They did. They went to Columbus, Ohio, and, I mean, it was Gucci, ostrich leather, silver buckle belt to behind. It was not pretty. And, like, y'all, we think of college football games, I think, in snapshots, and that kind of adds to our running definition, if you will, of who these teams are. It's not always accurate, but to me, I can't shake it. I can't shake what that front did to Indiana. I can't shake the talent gap that appeared to be evident when it came to Ohio State, Indiana. I don't think Notre Dame has the same talent level as Ohio State, but I do think that they have kind of that fight or flight mode that will serve them well, that they've been in since week two. I think Marcus Freeman will have this team dialed in. I think they end up beating Indiana, and they get out of the first round of the college football playoff. You also have in our final round one matchup, Penn State SMU. Now, if you were looking for an upset, this is one of the sneakiest matchups. Like, we talk a lot of ball in the office. One of the great parts about working in sports media, you got people that are like-minded that love college football like you, where you have conversations like this about, hey, who do you like in the first round? Where's the upsets? Penn State SMU is one that I would watch very, very closely. SMU has the personnel to, I think, I don't want to say out-scheme because that almost waters down how much we think of Brashard Smith and Kevin Jennings, but, like, the speed that SMU has in that backfield is enough to, I think, take advantage of the aggression of a Penn State. The concern for me with Penn State is, like, they looked awesome against Oregon. awesome offensively. Now, it wasn't the cleanest game. You had a couple turnovers, one that ended up costing you the game, but you scored 37 against Oregon. That was not a kind of game that you wanted to get into, and your offense responded. Now, you lost, but you still scored 37. My concern is with Penn State, like I just mentioned, have they emptied the clip? Did they reach their highest gear offensively? It wasn't enough, and then they revert back to the mean of being somewhat average offensively. So this is sneaky. I think if SMU were to win this game, full transparency, I would not be all that surprised. I think Rhett Lashlee is one of the best head coaches and offensive minds in the game. I love Kevin Jennings, like I mentioned, with his mobility. I love Brashard Smith. I think that front for SMU is also halfway decent, to be honest. I understand they haven't played world beaters all season long, but I think they got a little more juice than maybe they have been given credit for. Now, with that being said, what Clemson did early on to SMU is tough for me to shake, and I think Penn State, with just the overall talent gap they possess here with SMU, is going to be too much. I'll take Penn State to win in the first round of the college football playoff over SMU. They will advance to play Boise State. So a little bit chalky. We don't apologize for that. We said at the beginning of this whole season, I said, hey, listen, it's crazy this season's going to be with the conference realignment and the matchups. It's going to make for a lot of chaos. We're going to get to the college football playoff, and it's going to feel very chalky. So far, through round one, with us filling out this bracket, again, I cringe saying the word bracket with college football. We move on. Pretty chalky so far. So let's go back to the other side of the bracket. You have Ohio State and Oregon and Arizona State and Texas. Let's talk Ohio State, Oregon. This is a rematch now. Remember, we saw this one in Eugene, and it gave us all we wanted and then some when it comes to entertainment value. Will Howard, if he gets down a little bit earlier, if Dan Lanning doesn't go into the bag of tricks and pull out the 12-man formation on defense, maybe this game ends differently. However, this Oregon offense, I believe, is still going to score. I think they're going to score a lot of points. I think Dylan Gabriel and what he was in that game against Ohio State, he's improved even since then. It's also worth noting now, Oregon is getting Ohio State after give or take 3.5 weeks of rest. So Dan Lanning has got a chance for his team now to get back right. I'd be wildly surprised if that defense gave up the rushing yard total they did against Penn State, darn near 300, I believe it was, or in that category. Ohio State, I think them beating Tennessee will be such a relief. Emotionally, again, I wonder where they're at. Because the Michigan game takes the wind out of your sails. You get a win at home, theoretically, in our situation over Tennessee, and you got some belief back in you. I just think this Dan Lanning team is going to be on a mission. I don't see a world where Oregon, after running the gauntlet of the regular season and the Big Ten, gets some rest and loses their first college football playoff game. That, to me, is hard to believe. So I think they actually beat Ohio State in the rematch before the year. We said Oregon's going to beat Ohio State 3 times. In this situation, we haven't beaten them 2 times. All right, so Oregon gets past Ohio State, and they advance. Arizona State and Texas. This is fun, man. This is a lot of fun because I think Cam Scadaboo is more of a problem than I think the rest of the college football public wants to give credit for. That's great. You have an awesome run defense. You still got to meet number 4 in the hole. You still gotta bring your feet and wrap up and make sure you finish to the ground. Because if you don't, his yards after contact numbers are ridiculous. Low center of gravity, runs angry, went to the Marshawn Lynch School of Breaking Tackles. And then in addition to that, you got Sam Levitt back there, who I've said many times, man, he deals the pill like a shady pharmacist. I love what he brings to the table. Ryan Russillo, I'll repeat his take again. He has a take where he believes that how you look in your ESPN profile picture, your headshot on the website matters. In Sam Levitt's profile picture, he's got a gold chain. He plays like he's got a gold chain. All right, so I think this is actually going to be one of the more intriguing matchups of this round of the college football playoff. The tough part for me is if Arizona State had Jordan Tyson, I would feel a lot better about their ability to counterpunch against Texas. The concern for me is I think Texas in the secondary, like I mentioned against Clemson, I think their personnel is so solid across the board. Jade Barron, Makuba, Taft, they got dudes back there to where I think, again, you can give a lot of attention to the run game. And so if they can do that and make Arizona State have to throw the football, as much as I think of Sam Levitt, when you got guys dialed in for you up front, that's tough. That's very, very tough to put the game on him in the situation. So I think that paired with the reality that I think Quinn Ewers in this Texas offense is about to find their stride, the fact that they're continuing to not find it in a weird way makes me feel like it's still out there. So I'll take Texas to beat Arizona State. Again, So far, so chalky. We don't apologize for it. You got Texas and Oregon in the next round, and that takes care of, the majority of that side of the bracket, honestly, moving forward. So Oregon and Texas advance out of their respective sectors of that college football playoff bracket. So to the other side, you got Georgia, Notre Dame, Boise State, and Penn State set to get after it. Georgia and Notre Dame is fascinating. Now, full disclaimer on Georgia. I'm going to break them down as if they will not have Carson Beck available. That's not any intel. That's not me telling you I know something. I'm just going to go ahead and assume that Carson Beck is probably not going to be the guy, or at least the version of himself that he was for the regular season. Sounds like UCLs are not the most seamless thing to recover from. So I'll predict this, assuming now that Gunnar Stockton's at quarterback, or if you want to bake in the idea that Carson Beck's maybe a 75% version of himself as well, it doesn't really deter my opinion on Georgia. Notre Dame now. I told y'all on a Sunday reaction video to Notre Dame making the playoff, this is the matchup that would scare me the most if I'm Georgia. Because the Georgia Tech game, I think maybe exposed is a strong word, but I think maybe made visible a couple of extra flaws in the Georgia defense. Like, Haynes King is a great athlete, runs the football at a high level. Riley Leonard is like a real deal, tote the rock kind of guy back there for them at Notre Dame at the quarterback position. He's made a living running the football. I think this offense is starting to find their identity. And then you pair that with the idea, you got Jeremiah Love back there, who I think is one of the best all-purpose players in college football. I'm very excited for the entire college football public to get to see him play on this kind of stage. The thing with this game now, even if Gunnar Stockton's your guy for Georgia, I almost picked Notre Dame in this spot. I was very, very close. The reason why I'm not going to do that is, one, I've gone against Kirby Smart 2 separate times on this show, been wrong both times, and felt the wrath and felt stupid both Sunday mornings. The second part of that is I don't see a world where, just like I said with Oregon, Kirby off a bye, having that much time to prep and to get his team dialed in, like, I don't think they lose to Notre Dame. So I'll take Georgia to win that game. I think it's close. I think it's very, very entertaining. I think Georgia wins that football game. So a lot of good matchups here so far. If you're keeping track at home, I think all these games are within a touchdown spread so far. However, you got Boise State and Penn State still out there. Now, I think a lot of Ashton Jeanty, as you'll find out here in our Progrum Awards a little bit later in the show. I think a lot of the way they do their business out there for the Broncos, the concern for them with me is they are so Ashton Jeanty dependent. Not saying they don't have other ways they can attack you. Actually, they're a little bit less run-centric than you would probably guess. They're about 56% run. It feels like they're 80% run. But at the exact same time, they got Oregon early on in the year, and I don't think they saw the full strength of what that team was going to be. So I think we give Boise State a lot of credit for that Oregon loss, and we should, because of how closely they played them and how that loss has aged. But I think Penn State's going to be a different beast. I'll also say this. There's nobody else in America that has Abdul Carter on their roster. Penn State has him. That dude's a savage. That guy coming downhill, to me, is the answer to Ashton Jeanty. And so if you hold Ashton Jeanty to, let's just say he has a great day at the office and goes for 100 yards, I still think he probably has to go for 200 for them to beat Penn State. So I'll take Penn State to not neutralize, but maybe minimize an Ashton Jeanty impact on this football game. And I think that the Penn State offense, what we saw with the way they looked against Oregon, gave me some optimism about how they're going to be in this playoff. Again, I worry that they tapped out, but I do think even if they're a level below that, they should be able to beat Boise State. So Penn State's path now with SMU, a former G5 team, and then playing a G5 team in Boise State, like, not a bad draw. Not a bad draw for the old Nittany Lions. They advance to play Georgia. So now in the semis, again, very chalky. We said it before the year. It will be a very, very chalky college football playoff is how I see it going. Oregon and Texas, Georgia and Penn State. Notice now, this is not March Madness. Like, March Madness is awesome. We love March Madness because you got Fairleigh Dickinson making a run. You got Florida Gulf Coast, Dunk City making runs. But, like, in the game of football, the physicality edge, the physicality disparity between these different rosters is so visible. Like, there is no three-point shot. There is no, we have Steph Curry so we can pull up from half court and you know, your size and your length doesn't even matter. No, we got 11 grown men going up against another 11 grown men, and we're going to see who's more physical, who's more dominant, who has more matchups. That's why we have Oregon and Texas. That's why we have Georgia and Penn State. Now, to be real, Oregon and Texas, I wouldn't be, if you're either one of those fan bases and we get to this game, you have every right to feel like this is your national championship. That's not to say anything of Georgia or Penn State, but like you have every right to feel that way of like, hey, if we win this football game, very much so like a Georgia-Ohio State vibe of a couple of years ago when they played in Atlanta and the winner went out and just boat raced TCU. The thing for me with this game is you have two very complete teams and you have two bodies of work where I think Texas only having losses to Georgia should say a lot about who they are. My concern is I have seen so many different spots from Texas where they play a solid defensive line, an aggressive defense, and they struggle. Whether you want to put that on Quinn Ewers and the composure in that moment, whether you want to put that on the transfer portal wide receivers and them not all the way being in sync because Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell are gone to the league. Like, I don't know what you want to put it on. However, there's enough blemishes there, enough inconsistency there, against good competition, mind you, but enough inconsistency to make me a little bit concerned about who Texas is. Now, Oregon, the concern for them, obviously, like we've already mentioned a couple times, the way they looked up front against Penn State, I truly believe is a bit of an anomaly. Now, they've had other points this year where the run defense has looked minorly concerning, but in this playoff run, with their bye week, with who Dan Lanning is, like I think the Oregon defense will have it ready to roll. I think Oregon wins this football game. I love Dylan Gabriel. I love the way this offense is humming. We mentioned how good that Texas secondary is. I think this is a wide receiving core in Oregon that actually has enough weapons and enough maybe quantity of weapons is a better way to say it, that can strain this defense and force you to play matchup football. I love Tez Johnson against anybody in the slot. I'll say that. I love Tez Johnson against anybody. I love Dylan Gabriel, the way he's making good decisions. So that's a very long-winded way to tell you I think the matchups are fairly even, but the quantity of matchups to me favor Oregon across the board here will take the Ducks to advance to the national title game. Think about that, man. Dan Lanning, first year in the Big Ten, third year as the guy at Oregon. He's been swinging a hot bat on the recruiting trail. He's got the Nike back in, the brand of Oregon behind him, and they're playing for a national championship. Just if the season ends there, if you're Oregon, you feel like the trajectory of what you're going to be for a long time is really, really exciting. And you feel that way already, but to have something tangible like a national title berth with your third year under a new head coach in Dan Lanning, like I say new head coach, never been a head coach before, man. Like this is his first time on the job. He didn't have a situation where he was like, the head coach at, an FCS school and eventually worked his way up. Like this is his first head coaching job. And to have him playing for a national championship, if that happens, we should take note of that. And I think we should take stock into who Oregon is for a very long time with the way they've built that roster to, in this situation, beat Ohio State and beat an SEC team in Texas to get to the national championship game. Now, who do they play there? Georgia and Penn State will be, the black and blue bowl. Quite frankly, like I expect, especially if it is a Gunnar Stockton-led Georgia team, for these teams to beat the ever-living daylight out of each other. The thing with this game for me is like the big game chops, right? If James Franklin gets to this spot, there should be some respect put on his name. To make it to a college football playoff semifinal is no joke. Especially, talk about SMU, talk about Boise State, that's fine. Make sure you give James Franklin his respect. But at the exact same time, if it's Kirby Smart and James Franklin with a chance to go to the national championship game, I'm taking Kirby Smart and feeling great about it. Talk about the lack of experience at the quarterback position. That's fair. I still think the line of scrimmage for Georgia in these big moments, like against Texas, is a great example. When it is time to go win, when it's time to go hunt, both these trenches have shown they are more than willing to go meet the moment. And so I think in this situation now, I'll take the tougher team. I'll take the tougher team. I'll take the team with a better pedigree behind Kirby Smart. I'll take Georgia to beat Penn State, setting up a national championship match that we actually had before the season. Before the year, we said, hey, it's going to be Oregon, going to be Georgia, in Atlanta. Have to imagine that Georgia, with it being in their home state, will have a fair amount of the crowd. I know Oregon travels well, but this thing will be turned all the way up. Preseason now, we picked Georgia to win the national championship. Now remember, actually, this is funny. Rewind the tape to Dan Lanning's first game as the head coach at Oregon. Played in that building, played against that team, played against his old head coach and Kirby Smart, and they got boat raced. They got ran out of the building. Bo Nix did not look good. Kenny Dillingham was the offensive coordinator for Oregon. Like, Oregon did not have it that day. And Kirby Smart took the podium after that game and said, listen, we won that football game. And Dan Lanning would never tell you this. We won that football game because we had better players than them. I don't think it's that way anymore. I really don't. I think that Oregon and who they are offensively will translate against anybody. I think that Oregon, who they are in the trenches now, is up to par. Y'all, it's crazy because Kirby Smart in big games, you got to trust him, but I'm going to go ahead and take Oregon to win the national championship. And I think, again, the secondary of Georgia, they've been inconsistent. We've seen different teams, different quarterbacks get right against them. The trench play for Georgia, I think, is definitely their calling card, especially without Carson Beck or maybe a minimized version of Carson Beck going forward here. But I think that Oregon now, with who they are from a tempo perspective offensively, for how quickly Dylan Gabriel gets rid of the football, and then who they are on the defensive line as well, I think that's going to be enough to meet the price of admission and to make things different than the last time they met in Atlanta. I think Oregon wins your national championship. I just think the horsepower of Oregon is going to be too much for what Georgia has offensively at that point in time. So Dan Lanning, I mean, can you imagine the post-game press conference from Dan Lanning? Or when they're on the stage on the field in Atlanta and Dan Lanning's talking about what his team did to win the national championship? I guarantee you one thing, goosebumps and volume. Two things, goosebumps and volume. Okay, maybe it's a package deal, but that's who we have winning the whole darn thing. Let's take a look at it. Again, very chalky. We don't apologize for it. I think that's how it's going to go. I think Oregon wins the national championship over the Georgia Bulldogs in Atlanta. And, I mean, at that point, too, think about the narrative that's been set around what you can't do in Eugene, what you can't do if you're not in the southeastern part of the United States when it comes to acquiring talent, winning at a high level. If Oregon does that, it is definitely a flag plant as to the new era of what college football is here in 2024. Oregon Ducks, congratulations. You're our national champs. So there you have it. Shot is called. Again, we will predict each and every one of those games as they come our way. We are absolutely going to change our opinion as we get more information, but that is how we see things shaking out as it stands right now. Now, if you want to get in on some action for those games, the hard count brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Now, Prize Picks is something that we have enjoyed doing all year long. As we round the corner now into some of these postseason games, we're going to swing big. So if you want to swing big with us, follow on the socials. Using code HARDCOUNT now, when you just play $5 in lineups, just $5, you're going to find $5 walking down the street today. You get $50 in promo funds. So just for playing those $5, even if we win or lose, you get $50 to play with going forward here on Prize Picks. Again, code HARDCOUNT is how you get that done. Appreciate y'all using that code and appreciate Prize Picks bringing y'all the hard count today, Junior. All right, let's move right along here. The transfer portal, showing no mercy, continuing to churn, a lot going on there. Over the course of the last few shows, we've played some matchmaker, we've made some predictions, we've talked about names jumping in there. Let's just sort of take an all-encompassing look at where things are right now in the transfer portal, because we're starting to get some direction from these guys as to where they're going and taking visits and things of that nature. So we'll unpack that right now. But really quickly, for those of y'all tuned in live, make sure you've subscribed to the channel, because the transfer portal's madness, college football playoff around the corner. We just gave you our prediction for the national championship on the live show. If you're watching on the one-off video, go check that out on the channel. Bottom line, we need all the sickos dialed in. If you're a college football sicko, make sure you're subscribed. We appreciate you so much for that. So a lot of quarterback movement as of right now across the wonderful thing that is the transfer portal. Darian Mensah, Tulane quarterback. I told you on this show I thought he was an SEC caliber kind of quarterback. He committed to Duke yesterday. Sounds like NIL was potentially a factor there. How about this? Duke and North Carolina during your Tuesday, December 11th dominated the college football headlines, with Duke landing one of the top quarterbacks in the transfer portal and North Carolina landing arguably the greatest coach to ever walk the face of the planet in the NFL, in Bill Belichick. So I think that's a massive pickup for them. We've seen the ACC be fairly wide open at times. I mean, heck, SMU won the deal their first year in the played for the conference title their first year in the conference coming from the G5. You got a quarterback, you got a chance. Can change the whole complexion. Also now we'll see what happens with Duke if they're able to attract some more talent behind having a quarterback of Darian Mensah's caliber. Speaking of commitments, you had Connor Wegman, who was a former 5-star out of high school, previously at Texas A&M, lost his job at A&M, and he is now committed to Houston. Now, to me, it's somewhat of an eyebrow raiser from a football perspective, because you say, okay, like, hey, Houston, they weren't that great offensively. Like, I don't know if I'm circling Houston as the springboard to a tremendous NFL career. Maybe, maybe not. For Connor Wegman, though, I think this is more of a just career reset, if you will. He played his high school football 30 minutes from University of Houston in Cypress, Texas. We'll say this too, just like we said about Darian Mensah, if you want to attract talent, landing your quarterback early on in the portal cycle, not a bad way to go and try and revamp that roster out there in Houston. So keep an eye on that one. Connor Wegman taking his talents out there. It's a 5-star quarterback now in the Big 12, a fairly wide open conference. So interesting things there when it comes to those portal quarterback commitments. One more quarterback commitment we saw was Thomas Castellanos last night. Before the Connor Wegman commitment, you got the On3 main account going off. You got Thomas Castellanos committing to Florida State. And we said this in our reaction video, but I'll say it again right now. You see the headline, Boston College quarterback commits to Florida State. As a Florida State fan, you're like, I don't know if that's exactly the headline I was hoping to see when it comes to our transfer portal acquisition. Like, I would have been cool with like a guy from the SEC or, maybe a bigger branded school. Thomas Castellanos got after Florida State 2 years in a row, especially last year where they beat Florida State, or this past season, I suppose. Thomas Castellanos, to me, with him going to Florida State, this is Gus Malzahn, Mike Norvell doubling down on the offensive system they're going to have. Thomas Castellanos is not your pocket passer, not your guy that's going to throw it around the yard, but he is athletic as all get out. He is a slasher. He is going to fit perfectly into what Gus Malzahn wants to do in the run game. It's worth noting now, Gus Malzahn at UCF, his offense was 60% run. To me, this is Florida State trying to do simple better with Thomas Castellanos being their guy here going forward. So it looks like Mike Norvell and Gus Malzahn have got their quarterback for 2025. Now, here's a quarterback that's not committed yet. We called our shot for him to end up at Mississippi State. Makes a lot of sense because of his former, offensive coordinator, the head coach now at Mississippi State, and Jeff Lebby, who was previously at Oklahoma with Jackson Arnold. Jackson Arnold now, it may not be as cut and dry as we thought. Okay, as of this week, it was reported by Pete Nakos and I believe the folks at Auburn Live, the Auburn On 3 site, that Jackson Arnold will be taking a visit out to the Plains, checking in with the guys out there on that staff with Hugh Freeze. I get this, all right? So while Mississippi State has the personnel from a familiarity standpoint for Jackson Arnold, the personnel on the field for Auburn, I think, is a little bit more built out. Now, it's not me telling you that Auburn is going to go win 10 games next year because of who they have on that roster. But I do think you look around and say, okay, there's Cam Coleman there. There's a tremendous recruiting class coming in. This is a young roster that I think is right on the brink of doing some really good things. Quarterback guy in Hugh Freeze, they can have success with the right guy pulling the trigger in that RPO system. So Jackson Arnold, I think, would fit that system should he end up going there. Very curious now that it's not just an open and closed situation where he's going to Mississippi State. The further this progresses, again, I have no intel. I'm not telling you I know anything, but just from a human nature standpoint, as things progress, I wonder how that door opens for an Auburn to maybe land Jackson Arnold. We'll see. Again, I'm not selling my stock on him, former 5-star. I just think Oklahoma was a brutal situation. We've unpacked that before, but just keep an eye on that one. Deshaun Womack, previously an edge at LSU, he signed with Ole Miss. Former 5-star in the class of 2023, 6'5", 260 pounds. Dudes like him do not grow on trees. Don't look now, but Lane Kiffin, what did he do last portal cycle? Stalk the trenches, baby. Big people move small people. Prince Leo Yellen, Walter Nolan. A lot of success stories in the trenches now with guys going to Ole Miss and playing in that defense. Deshaun Womack now, look at the raw ingredients from the talent perspective, from the attributes perspective, physically, would not be surprised if he was a guy that just kind of fit perfectly into that blueprint and was a guy that added to the efforts there defensively for Ole Miss. Again, that is a signature from what I understand for the good folks out there in Oxford. Micah Hudson, previously a 5-star plus wide receiver in this most recent recruiting class in 2024. He was at Texas Tech, did not see the field, I don't think, the way that maybe he believed he would or believed he should. He has hit the portal. There is a prediction out there right now for the previously 5-star plus wide receiver to end up at Texas A&M. That is per On3 Steve Wiltfong and Pete Nakos. So it's not a done deal, but there's a prediction right now for him to end up in College Station. Worth noting, Micah Hudson, dude can play a little bit. Just because he didn't have the year he wanted to have last year doesn't mean he's not a baller. Is currently the number 3 player overall in the transfer portal, regardless of position. I think that's worth noting. So Micah Hudson, again, there's a pick in for him right now to College Station. It's interesting when you talk about Texas A&M going forward here. As long as Mike Elko's the head coach and Colin Klein's the OC, they're going to be physical up front. they're going to run the football. Where they get scary is what we talked about yesterday, where they can add some matchups on the perimeter, start to challenge vertically, open up the pass game, and at that point, okay, then we can get you off balance and we can really make some magic here offensively. So Micah Hudson, a 5-star plus wide receiver, added into that mix would not be a negative thing by any stretch of the imagination for the folks out there. Here's a portal quarterback that jumped in, Fernando Mendoza from Cal. Over 3,000 yards this year. I believe he is currently the top quarterback available per us here at On3 in the transfer portal. Threw for 16 touchdowns last year to 6 interceptions. Whenever guys jump in the portal, one of the first things we look at is, okay, well, who was in the mix for them out of high school? And then where did they go to high school? Like, where are they from? Fernando Mendoza, from right around Miami's area. Miami now, with Cam Ward leaving the league, you wonder if they'll be in the portal quarterback market. Shannon Dawson, that air raid offense is an attractive system to play in, especially based on what Cam Ward did last year statistically. I don't know. I don't know if there's mutual interest, but if we're just putting the pieces together, if he wants to go back home and if Miami would have him, I think that could be an interesting fit. Fernando Mendoza, too, if y'all remember correctly, caught social media fire with his interview post-game after they beat Stanford in that rivalry game. 98 yards with my boys, baby. That interview is enough to go ahead and add Fernando Mendoza to my roster. So the portal continues to churn and have some movement. That's the latest when it comes to some of the visits and commitments. But as always, we'll keep you posted and in the know for all things transfer portal right here on the On3 YouTube channel on this show, The Hard Count. So again, make sure you are subscribed. Hey, good action in the chat right now, man. Glad to see y'all here. Glad to have y'all a part of this. Quick plug. This show is also on podcast. I know a lot of y'all consume via YouTube. That is our main medium to broadcast this show to you. But if you're more of a podcast person, I know Spotify Wrapped came out, Apple Replay came out. Some of y'all tagged us in your podcast, Spotify Wrapped. We appreciate you for that. If you weren't satisfied with your Spotify Wrapped this year and you want to kind of bolster that up a little bit more, might not be the worst thing in the world to go and just download every single episode of The Hard Count for next year. Just saying. But speaking of the transfer portal, Florida is one of those schools that I think is about to go portal combat mode on this whole deal. Because when you look at what they're made of right now and the situation in Florida right now, like it is all about maximizing the now. There is no next year for Florida. It is all about this season. I say this season in the respects of 2025, not 2026. So what's the plan for Florida going forward here in the transfer portal? We'll unpack that right now. Make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already. College football, nothing but college football. From Gainesville, Florida, to Los Angeles, California, to Eugene, Oregon, to Lincoln, Nebraska, we're talking about all of it. Make sure you're dialed in. We appreciate you for being subscribed. So, like I said, you got DJ Lagway, man. Period. Full stop. And that is enough for you to, I believe, spend a check to go after anybody and everybody who can help you in 2025 out there in Gainesville, Florida. And the reason why I say that is, like, do you know how many schools, how many head coaches would give their left arm and their kicker to have a caliber of quarterback that DJ Lagway is? So that is the biggest puzzle piece to that is the hardest piece to get right is the quarterback, and you got one in DJ Lagway. And it's not a situation where you're trying to squint and see what he could be. He's showing you what he is, and he's not even fully healthy. The way you finished the year with wins over LSU and Ole Miss, like that's the real deal of DJ Lagway. That is tangible. That is something you can wrap your arms around and say, okay, this is the direction going forward. So I think that was massive for Florida on a number of levels. One, to just get confirmation of what they already knew they had in-house in a 4-quarter game. That's massive. But also to have a marketable moment to say to recruits in the transfer portal, hey, listen, this is where we're going. This is who's leading us there in DJ Lagway. Do you want to come be a part of it? If you're a receiver, come catch passes from this dude. That's where I want to start. If I am Florida, I look at this portal crop of wide receivers. There's a lot of them now, a lot of big-time guys. And I'm going after at least 2 or 3. Now, I don't know if they land 2 or 3, but I am doing everything in my power to make sure when we get on the field next year, we are not going to be in a situation where we finish the season and say, gosh dang, man, DJ Lagway is awesome, but we didn't have anybody for him to throw the football to. Now, how sad would that be? It's kind of like when you look at USC and Miami the last couple of seasons with their respective quarterbacks. Caleb Williams at USC 2 years ago, Cam Ward this past year. You're like, man, we got a great quarterback. He was a guy that could have won every game for us. However, we didn't have a defense. Now, obviously, you want to avoid that situation as well if you're Florida, but I think most immediately, if we didn't have receivers for our guy, not a way you want to live. Not a way you want to live at all. So I would look at guys, I mean, not to mention names, but like there's a heavy dose of high-profile pass catchers in the portal right now, and I would expect Billy Napier to go after them in a very major way. In addition to that, the trenches is going to always be the story for teams that go win conference championships, right? I mean, you look across the board this past weekend. Georgia, why'd they win the SEC? Trenches. Oregon, same deal. Trenches. Clemson, trenches. Arizona State, manhandled Iowa State in the trenches. Building the offensive and defensive line, especially via the portal, like whenever someone says, hey, do we have enough players there? Do we have enough depth there? The answer is always no. Like building the trenches is like lifting legs. You can always do more, and it's always going to benefit you. It's always going to be functional for you, for your roster. So I think when you look at them going forward now, you want to protect DJ Lagway, first and foremost. But in addition to that, man, you want to have a multidimensional offense. Like, you got some dudes in the backfield now in Jaden Baugh that you can hand the rock to and feel real good about what he's going to do when he gets it. Put some dudes in front of him that are going to equip him to move the football going forward. On the flip side, like defensively, especially in the SEC, that's the price of admission. Got to have dudes up front in the trenches to make it go. So as we talk this out, man, like you see the way this is all trending. You got your main puzzle piece, your main centerpiece in DJ Lagway. Don't sit here next year with 7 wins again because you weren't willing to go big in the portal. Now I'll address that right now. Billy Napier is he's here for a good time, and he hopes a long time, but like he is here for a good time right now. This is not a situation where Billy Napier is hoping for next Christmas. It's about this Christmas, baby. It's make it happen season, as Caden Smith would say. There's a lot of potential within Florida, the state of Florida, for these big 3, big 4 if you count UCF. But we talk about what 2025 looks like between Florida State, Florida, Miami. Is there a school with higher stock right now than Florida? I don't think so. And that's not to say anything less of what Miami has done this year. Because Miami, obviously, the best record in the state, won 10 football games. Cam Ward's going to be a Heisman Trophy finalist. Like, it's all phenomenal. However, Cam Ward's playing for one of the 32 NFL teams next year. We'll see what happens with the rest of Miami's roster. If I have to pick a quarterback in the state right now, I'm taking DJ Lagway. I'm not thinking twice about it. And I don't know who Miami's guy is going to be. Looks like Florida State's going to have Thomas Castellanos. Not a bad pickup, but I don't think it's DJ Lagway. So I say all that to get to this point of like, if you can be the school in the state of Florida, you are surrounded by so much high school talent to where this thing has a chance to take off in a hurry. Like you're pouring Coke on the Mentos Coca-Cola on the Mentos that is the Florida football program, in my humble opinion. Because if you go and win 9, 10 games next year, make the college football playoff, you're the school in the state from the SEC. You have a clear trajectory of where you're headed. You have stability around the coaching staff. Like, what reason do you need to go to Florida at that point in time? At that point in time, you're swinging a hot bat on the recruiting trail, and that builds rosters for years to come. So the opportunity right now for Florida is massive with DJ Lagway, with where they are in the state, and I'm expecting them to swing a major, major bat in the portal right now for the wide receiver position, and then obviously every team should be swinging a big bat when it comes to the trenches. Expect them to do that. Expect them to do that. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not going to happen. All right. Here we go. This is something I know a lot of y'all have been waiting for a long time. Since the end of last year's awards, I know there was already preparations and aspirations and goals written down to win a Progrum award this time next year. It's finally here. The 2024 Progrum Awards are about to be given out. If you're new to the show, the Progrum Awards for us is the postseason hardware that we award to multiple program guys or program coaches for what they did during the 2024 regular season. So if you won an award in the past, I'm sure that you are probably still keeping that thing on your mantle. If you're about to win an award right now, congratulations, you're about to be a part of a very special fraternity. So let's start with a fan favorite, Dime Dropper of the Year. Now this award goes to the quarterback that routinely deals dimes like it's his job. Another way to say this, deals the pill like a shady pharmacist all around the yard. We value accuracy, we value touchdowns, we value flash, we value efficiency. And there was no one that I think checked all those boxes more than Colorado's very own Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur, congratulations, you're the dime dropper of the year. 74% completion percentage, man. 74%. I mean, that is, you go to the county fair, you're leaving with a lot of stuffed animals. You shoot 74%. I'll say that much. 35 touchdown passes, 8.6 yards a pass, so there was no check down artistry from Shedeur. Shedeur Sanders put on a show. I expect him to be the first player taken in the NFL draft. Even if you didn't enjoy Colorado this past year, even if you had some take as to them being too pulverizing, you didn't like the way that Deion Sanders operated, you still watch Shedeur Sanders put on a show every single Saturday. He is our dime dropper of the year, Shedeur. Congratulations. Now this next award, a new award to the Progrum Awards, and that is the JanSport Award. Now this award goes to the player that literally carried their team on their back like a JanSport book bag through the hallways of any given high school. And that award this year goes to Boise State's very own running back, Ashton Jeanty. Now, this is not to say less of who Boise State is on the defensive side. This is not to say less of who they are at the quarterback position. But to be real, man, every single weekend, you knew what the deal was if you played Boise State. Hey, guess what? They're going to give it to that Mike Myers-looking guy in the backfield. He's going to touch it probably 30-plus times. If we stop him, we might win the football game. Nobody did that. Even Oregon, who beat Boise State, did not do that. So the numbers are massively impressive, right? 2,500 yards, 29 touchdowns, 7 yards per carry. That's all impressive, regardless of who it's against. It's more impressive because everybody knew it's going to be Ashton Jeanty left, Ashton Jeanty right. Can you stop him? And even if you bottled him up for the first half, even if you bottled him up for 3 quarters, at some point in time, he was going to get his. And the way that he carried Boise State, not just the college football playoff, but to a bye in the first round of the college football playoff is massively impressive. Not to say anything less of Boise State, but Ashton Jeanty, the JanSport Award is yours. Congratulations. You got a Progrum Award headed your way. It's in the mail. Now, this is another fan favorite. The Oh My Gosh, How Is He Only a Freshman Award. This award is given to the individual across college football that is obviously a freshman, not a redshirt freshman, but a true freshman. And you watch him play and you're like, wait, that guy was in high school last year? How in the world is he doing what he's doing right now in the world of college football? A lot of great nominees for this award. Dylan Raiola was up for this award. Ryan Williams was up for this award. The winner of this award, though, is none other than Ohio State wide receiver Jeremiah Smith. Now, just physically alone, the dude is looking like he could be in the NFL tomorrow. 6'3", 215 at wide receiver. At wide, not like he's a redshirt freshman who's trying to get on the field and bulk up to play tight end, wide receiver. Dude looks like he was developed in a lab. He had 10 touchdown catches this year. He has a case, quite frankly, forget being a freshman. He's a case to be the best wide receiver in college football this season, in my humble opinion. He made one-handed catches look routine. I mean, I am so excited for us to get him in college football for the next couple of years because he is special, extremely special. And you very obviously, if you had never seen Ohio State play football, had never seen Jeremiah Smith play ball before, and you saw him, you're like, wow, is that guy a senior? No, he's a freshman. Oh my gosh, How Is He Only a Freshman Award goes to none other than Jeremiah Smith. Now, this is our award that we're going to give out next that goes to not a player but a coach. And coach is another word that we use on this show for leader. All right, so the Program Leader of the Award, Program Leader of the Year Award goes to a coach that led their program to greater than maybe what they would have accomplished given just their roster. The Program Leader of the Year is Arizona State head coach Kenny Dillingham. Now, a lot of good nominations. You could have absolutely gone with Deion Sanders here. Could have gone with Shane Beamer here. Could have gone with Dan Lanning here. We're going with Kenny Dillingham because you know who believed in Arizona State? Nobody. Nobody outside of those 4 walls in Tempe, Arizona, because they were picked to finish last in the Big 12. And guess what? They're chilling during the first round of the college football playoff. They're chilling at home because they're going to play in the next round after a bye. So they won the Big 12. Cam Scadaboo has been a tremendous story. He went out and got a portal quarterback in Sam Levitt. Like, the belief that Kenny Dillingham, the emotion, the passion he's instilled within this roster, I think is reflective of how they play. And absolutely a guy that you would run through a wall for tomorrow. Kenny Dillingham, a guy I would run down tomorrow on kickoff coverage for, just so we're on the same page. Program Leader of the Year award goes to Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State. Now, here's a fun one. This is one that Caden Smith, Cato, if you will, we put our heads together on this one, and this was a fun new addition to the Program Awards. The Teen Choice Award. Now, the Teen Choice Award is the award given to the player that best exemplifies ridiculously special gifts before the age of a legal adult of 18. This player also will likely have their age mentioned on every single broadcast that he's only 17, and it will beat into the skull of every viewer on the broadcast as he proceeds to go crazy in the actual game being played. This year's winner of the Teen Choice Award is none other than Alabama wide receiver Ryan Williams. Now, Ryan Williams, yes, his age is hilarious, and it was. I mean, every single broadcaster, for whatever reason, couldn't help themselves and say he's only 17. It's cool to know that one time, but when you've told me that 17 times, and we haven't even hit halftime yet, a little bit excessive. I don't care what age he is. 17 yards of reception in the SEC is stupid. 45 catches on the year, 8 touchdowns. He has a case for the play of the year and that catch against Georgia that ultimately sealed the deal. I cannot wait to see what he is here in the future. Depending on who Alabama has at quarterback, I think there's a lot more in the tank for him as he progresses and matures. Jalen Milroe is, I think, a tremendous talent. His game is more geared towards running the football, I believe. And he's a good passer. Don't get it twisted. A great thrower of the football. But there were games now where you didn't hear a lot from Ryan Williams because Jalen Milroe's going for over 100 yards on the ground, and it should be that way. But make no mistake, Ryan Williams deserves and has earned his Teen Choice Award. Congratulations, Ryan. Progrum Award is in the mail. The Greatest Showman Award is a new addition to the Progrum Awards. This is an award given to an individual that is legitimately must-see TV every time they lace them up. I don't care what else you're watching. You got American Idol on, you got Seinfeld on, you got reruns of The Amazing Race on. You change it when this dude is playing football, all right? And that is none other than Miami quarterback Cameron Ward. Over 4,000 yards passing this year. And you see that number, you're like, wow, that's super impressive. Like, this dude is special, 100%. But when you actually watch the way that he did it, running sideline to sideline, he's rolling left, throwing right, he's doing the different arm slots deal. Like, I mean, just the entertainment value with how he achieved the production he achieved this year, willing Miami to 10 wins with, let's call a spade here, not a ton of help on defense. Cam Ward is special. I cannot wait to watch him at the next level. You get the whole seat whenever he's playing. You only need the edge. Cam Ward. The Greatest Showman Award, very much so well-deserved for Cam Ward. And hopefully he puts that on his mantle wherever he's headed to play his NFL football. Here's a fun one. The Gallon Jug Player of the Year Award. Now, this award is given to the individual that you would probably bet a fair amount of your net worth that they carry a gallon jug around wherever they're going. And you know what I'm talking about, right? Like, this is in no way a slight, and the exact opposite. It's a compliment. Like, they like to hit the gym. They hit biceps. They probably do their fair amount of shrugs. Like, they do their push-pull legs, whatever their split is. But they are consistently carrying that jug of water around because that's just how they get down. And I've said this before. You know an individual like this that went to your high school. Like, you know somebody that walked around with a gallon jug every single day, probably wore a tank top or two. Like, good for them, more power to them. This award goes to none other than Cam Skattebo. Cam Skattebo, 6 yards a carry, 1,500 yards on the ground, 19 total touchdowns. I cannot wait to watch him in the college football playoff. Dude is built like a small truck, and God bless whoever has to meet him in the hole that first run that he gets in their college football playoff game. So Cam Skattebo from Arizona State, your Gallon Jug Player of the Year. The IHOP Award for us here on this show goes out to the offensive line that deals out pancakes 24/7. A lot of good nominees. You could have had Oregon, could have had Michigan for their performance at the end of the year against Ohio State. You could have had a number of other schools, I suppose. You could look at Iowa is always a contender for this award with how they run the football. This award, though, this year goes to Army. Say Army. And this is no military appreciation. This is just straight up appreciation for how they get down running the football, man, though we do appreciate the military nonetheless. Over 300 rush yards a game for Todd Monken's squad. 2 1,000-yard rushers. Average 5.5 yards a carry as a team. Triple option attack, so beautiful. I know it's kind of evolved a little bit over the course of the last couple of seasons. Army has absolutely earned this award. I cannot wait to see Army-Navy this upcoming weekend. Bryson Daly toting the rock. They got some dudes running the football, but tell you what, they got some guys up front as well, laying it on the line and willing this team to the kind of rushing production they had this season. So your IHOP award goes to none other than the Army offensive line. Now, finally, a fan favorite here. A lot of fan favorites, you can tell. Are they really fan favorites, or are we just saying that? The world may never know. They're fan favorites to us, though. The Pat McAfee Punter of the Year award goes to a punter rather that makes a habit every single Saturday out of absolutely slaughtering the football with their left or right leg. The Pat McAfee Punter of the Year award this year goes to Georgia's very own Brett Thorson. Now, Brett, hope you're healing up watching this. Dude's a unit, man. 6'2", 235 pounds, 22 punts inside the 20, an average of 47.5 yards on any given punt. He was a weapon for Georgia. Now, he doesn't get as much shine because of the quarterback and the defense and the head coach. Brett Thorson's going to be a problem at the next level. I fully believe that. Hope he gets well soon. But he absolutely has earned his Pat McAfee Punter of the Year award. Brett, this is on its way to you. And again, hoping you have a speedy recovery. Now, the grand finale here, it's worth noting. The hard count Heisman that we've given out the last 2 years, we give it out. And then the Heisman Trophy voters end up following suit and giving out the award to who we give out our award to. So does this factor into the award? I don't know. But I'm just saying the last 2 years, the Heisman Trophy Trust or whatever, the voting powers, they have copied us. They've copied us. I'll say that. But this year's hard count Heisman goes to none other than wide receiver, cornerback, do-it-all at Colorado, Travis Hunter. We will never see another play like Travis Hunter. And that sometimes people say generational in a hyperbolic way. That does not apply for Travis Hunter. And I don't think this is a thing either where he's like laying the groundwork for guys to come after him and play both ways. Like, this is not something you will see again. And people are very quick to say, well, look, he doesn't have as many tackles as, other defensive players should. He doesn't put up the stats at corner. If you are doing your job at corner, if you're locked down at corner, you don't put up stats. You don't have many tackles. Why? Because they're not throwing the ball at you. You don't have PBUs because they don't even try your side of the field. So there's that part of things when it comes to what he does on defense. And then offensively, it felt like he was a walking 100-yard game. I mean, what he did that final game of the season against Oklahoma State was just absolutely, abuse when it comes to that Oklahoma State defense. So he has earned this. I don't think it's even that close. I love Ashton Jeanty. Any other year, he probably does win the Heisman Trophy. But what Travis Hunter has done this season is something we will, again, it will never, ever be done another time. So the hard count Heisman, again, deservedly going to Colorado's very own Travis Hunter. So there you have it, the 2024 Progrum Awards in the books. Obviously, the Progrum Awards, as I mentioned multiple times, are in the mail heading to those recipients. And we appreciate everyone who's been tuned in live throughout the course of the show and who contributed to us putting this whole Progrum Awards ceremony together, man. Very, very much a fun highlight for us at the end of every regular season. Excited to see how the college football postseason awards are given out. I believe that's this weekend is their award show. Before we get out of here, though, I want to make sure y'all know we got a new sponsor to the show. They've been good to us. They were with us this time last year, jumped back on board here for this college football playoff run, I believe. Axia Time is the official timepiece for both the college football playoff and the Heisman Trophy, and probably the best kept secret, in my opinion, in college football. These timepieces are heirloom quality, and among the coolest designs in the college football space, Axia has created a series of limited edition timepieces for all 12 teams in the college football playoff. So if you're an Arizona State fan, go get you a watch. If you're a Boise State fan, get you a watch. Oregon, I picked you to win the national championship. Go get you a watch to commemorate this college football playoff berth by your team. So go ahead and act fast at Axia.com before they sell out. If you are a watch person, you will see the specs and quickly realize these watches are of great value and of quality and customization. If you don't know a lot about Swiss-made watches, trust me, do your homework. They're a great deal. Now, I personally am a proud owner of an Axia timepiece and have enjoyed the heck out of wearing. I mean, whenever I want to dress up a little bit more, I wear a T-shirt to most of our events for media, so whenever I can throw the Axia time on there, kind of up the level of play a little bit, they take care of us, and it's a phenomenal, phenomenal piece. So check out their designs at Axia.com. That is, AxiaTime.com. That's AXIA time.com to commemorate the season with a watch that will tell so much more than time. Fun week, man. Fun week. The portal's popping. I'm sure after we get off the air, there'll be more big-time news coming out of the portal, so we will obviously keep you in the know for all things on that front. A lot going on. Probably a lot going on in your world. Getting ready for the holidays. A lot going on in the world of college football. Thank you for spending time with us and choosing to make this a part of your hustle and bustle during this December month. Caden Smith, Cato on the ones and twos for myself, JD PicKell. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. You matter. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.